11, Mentesh podcast. And hello, this is me. Face reveal. Let's go. Yeah, new style. It's a private shubs, no guest. Got my iPad up on my monitor, balancing, and yeah, I'm filming it. So, little bit of a different vibe today. I've been researching an interesting topic, well, a topic that I find interesting anyway, and I'm going to present that information to you lovely lot. And I hope you find it interesting too. And hopefully it's not too lectury, and I hope it's a bit engaging. But yeah, the topic for today's episode I've decided to research is the history of Cyprus. Obviously, I'm Cypriot. I'm Turkish Cypriot. And Cyprus is a beautiful country, very popular holiday destination. But it's also a divided country, a divided island. Although very small, the Republic of Cyprus, as we know today, only encapsulates the Greek Cypriot people and the southern half of the island. Due to reasons I'll explain today, the Turkish side, or northern Cyprus, is the people, well, it's its own sovereignty, I guess, but it's its own state, but it's an unrecognized state. So doesn't really count in the eyes of the international world. The only country that recognizes it as a real country is Turkey. Everyone else thinks it doesn't exist. As a result, today, the North Cyprus and the South Republic of Cyprus are two very different worlds. The southern part of Cyprus being in the European Union, being in Europe, obviously, being a actual real place that you can go on holiday to, like you can get a direct plane there and stuff. Northern Cyprus, you can't even get a direct flight there. You have to go through Turkey, or you have to go to the south of Cyprus, fly there, and then get a bus or taxi or whatever to the northern part. And also, like Northern Cyprus, they got no football team. Well, they have a football team, but they don't play anyone. They're not in the Euros and not in the World Cup. It's the same for all the other sports. Yeah, it's a bit of a strange place. Infrastructure isn't great over there. Not a lot of economic activity, not loads of jobs, a lot of poverty. And it's been like this for many years. But yeah, so to set the foundations for this topic, I'm going to first talk about the actual history of Cyprus. So we're going to start ancient history. So Cyprus, many moons ago, ancient Greece, Plato and them boys used to live there. And then the Roman Empire rocked up. This is around 4th century, all the way up to 1453 AD. So the Byzantine Empire, which is the eastern constituent of the Roman Empire, with its capital being Constantinople, Cyprus was part of the empire. And then moving on to the Crusaders in the 11th and 13th centuries. Crusaders being European Christians who were on a bit of a mission to reclaim Holy Land from Muslim control. And then we move on to the 16th century, where the Ottomans conquered Cyprus and took it from the Venetians, the people of Venice, which was its own power back in the day. So the Greek Cypriots, or the Greek-speaking language, the Greeks, have been in Cyprus for about 4,000 years, so a bit of a while. The Turkish Cypriots, the Turkish language, has only really been on Cyprus about 400 years. And if you took, I don't know, a typical Cypriot person and looked at their hereditary, went on, did that ancestry.com, not sponsored, and put it through the test tubes, whatever, you'd find that the typical hereditary, I don't know, genome is Jewish, Lebanese, Italian, Armenian. And so in the 19th century, boom, Britain rock up. British Empire, go around the world, absolutely obliterating everyone. I'm just going to pull this in. I don't want to add these in first. I would start again, but I've actually started quite well, so I'm going to crack on. But yeah, I'm going to move these lights closer so you can see me better. But yeah, so boom, 19th century, Suez Canal. So if you were in the British Empire and you wanted to get to India, the jewel in the crown, you had to get on your boat and you had to sail all the way around Africa to get to India. And that would take forever. But at the bottom of the Mediterranean lies the gap between Egypt and Asia and Europe. The Suez Canal, which is a man-made canal that means you can get on your boat, say going around Africa, you go past Portugal, go past Gibraltar, blah, under Italy, and then you can go through Egypt, bang, all the way to India in no time at all, saving weeks of travel time. So Britain wanted Cyprus. They thought Cyprus would be a good opportunity to defend this new Suez Canal and police their empire and ensure trade is ongoing safely. So they went, so at the time, the Ottomans had control of Cyprus, and they said, look, Mr. Ottoman, I see you're at war with Russia at the moment. How about we do a little deal? If we back you against Russia, how about you slide us Cyprus a little gift? We'll do some business. And they're like, sound, deal. And then boom, World War I erupts. There's war in Europe. And in the war, Britain and the Ottomans were actually on opposing sides. End of the war, fall of the Ottoman Empire. Britain now had basically control of Cyprus. So this is 1920, end of the war. Republic of Turkey emerged from the Ottoman Empire. Fast forward to 1955, after years and years of British Cypriot rule, the Cypriots are now seeing all the way around the world that all these former British colonies are now starting to get independence. India, everywhere's becoming independent. The British Empire is no longer what it was. Everywhere's becoming independent. And Cyprus wasn't any outlier. They wanted their independence themselves. But their aim wasn't just independence from Britain. It was independence from Britain and unification with Greece. As you might think, unification with Greece, but we've got Turkish Cypriots living in Cyprus. Yeah, bit of a clash of ideas there. But there was some political forces in Cyprus at the time that wanted this unification with Greece, as well as the independence from Britain. These people, or this movement, was called Enosis, which basically translates as unification with Greece. And that's a term I'll be using a lot in this episode. So Enosis, unification with Greece. For context, the island of Crete, which is part of Greece, another popular holiday destination, another beautiful part of the world. Similar thing happened years ago. Unification with Greece occurred and all the Muslims were kicked out. So the Turks living in Cyprus, Turkish Cypriots, were looking at this new unification with Greece movement and looking a bit like, I feel like we might get booted out of here if this carries on. The leader of Cyprus at the time was Archbishop Makarios, and he was also the head of the Greek Orthodox Church, and he was also the leader of Enosis. Ioka was basically the political movement that wanted Enosis. And they also had an armed leader called Colonel Georgios Grievous. Yeah, General Grievous from Star Wars. This guy's called Grievous. Yeah, gangster name, but yeah. So in retaliation to this new Enosis movement, two Turkish Cypriot leaders emerged, most notably Rauf Denktaş and Dr. Fazıl Küçük. And as an objection to this unification of Greece movement, they wanted Taksim, which is the Turkish equivalent of Enosis. But instead of unification with Turkey, they just wanted partition of Cyprus. So they just wanted their own part, half of it for them and then there will be their own sovereign place, and the South can do whatever they want. The Greek Cypriots can do it. If they want to join Greece, they can join Greece, but they just want their own bit of Cyprus where they could do their own thing. And this Taksim ideology was backed up by the TMT organization, which was an underground organization that's aim was to protect the Turkish Cypriots from enosis. The Greek Cypriots saw these TMT organization not as Turkish Cypriot protectors, but as preventers of British independence. Like they didn't look at them as their own organization to try and protect their own people. They looked at them as British collaborators as such. So they were looking at them as almost enemies, really. And as a result of this friction and these conferring ideologies and wants of the people, it basically started kicking off, beefing, people getting killed, shit started kicking off. And in turn, Greece and Turkey were kind of beefing as well. And at the time, Greece and Turkey, both part of NATO. So Britain don't want two NATO members beefing, mainly because Turkey is the only non-Arctic route for NATO directly into the Soviet Union. So it's an important ally. And Greece has been an ally of Britain for many years. So to have Turkey and Greece now beefing, two important allies, is not good. So they wanted to squash this beef. So after about 3 years of violence, Makarios was told to come to London and we'll grant Greece independence, and you lot can stop bickering and fighting over the ins and outs of whatever. We'll just give you independence, and we've also got a brand spanking new constitution for you to live by. So in August 16th, 1960, British granted independence to Cyprus, establishing the Republic of Cyprus. This agreement included power sharing between the Greek Cypriots, Turkish Cypriot communities, ensuring both had a role in governance. Nice. However, in the T's and C's, in the small print, the United Kingdom retained sovereignty over 2 bases on the island. So, key features of the constitution: the president had to be a Greek Cypriot, and the vice president had to be a Turkish Cypriot. Government jobs would be distributed at a 70-30 ratio, with the majority ratio being Greek Cypriots. There were separate municipalities, probably should learn how to say that word before I read it out, and veto powers were given to the Turkish Cypriots. However, this system was fragile and there was a bit of tension there. And the main reason for this fragility in this constitution was that the population of Cyprus was 77% Greece and 18% Turkish Cypriots. And that rest of 5%, for those of you good at maths, was others like Maronites and Armenians and other people. But the power seemed a bit, considering there was a Greek majority, the Turks had a lot of power in this new constitution. And this new constitution was not what a lot of the Greek Cypriots wanted, because they wanted enosis. They didn't want no Republic of Cyprus. They wanted to be part of Greece. So, Makarios, he wanted 13 constitutional changes, and these were aimed at diluting the protection Turkish Cypriots had and the powers, and mainly because he wanted enosis. However, one of the terms in the constitution was that enosis is not allowed. You can't be ditching the Republic of Cyprus and joining Greece. And also, you can't be partitioning Ireland into 2 separate bits. So, and they weren't happy. They weren't happy with this new constitution. So, December 1963, a civil war erupts. And it erupts due to a patrol car stopping a Turkish Cypriot couple heading home. They were asked for their identity papers for no reason, really. And ended up shots fired, people got killed, word spread, and all of a sudden, civil war erupts. And that's usually how these things happen. Tension's so high, all it takes is one little thing and bang, it's kicking off. Scrapping. But this is just scrap. People getting murdered. People getting massacred, really. Like, whole villages getting killed. people rocking into villages, killing the whole village. And then you got revenge killings, people hearing that the village got killed, so they all bear arms and go kill another village. Hostage taking, rapes. Yeah, it's not pretty at all. And this happens between 1963 and 1964. Big scale civil war. So as a result, the Greek Cypriots are really kind of dominating here. They're really like going for it in terms of the killings. So the Turkish Cypriots flee their homes and they withdraw to enclaves. So basically like campsites basically in the north, because just like basically in the middle of nowhere, and they end up going to the north. And this kind of withdrawal of the Turkish Cypriot people from their homes, from the communities where they were living side by side with the Greek Cypriots, is basically the Taksim idea, that the partition of Cyprus. So now, because of the fighting, people have withdrawn from their communities and formed new communities. But these enclaves, yeah, like I said, just campsites. And this lasted about 10 years, people living in these campsites. But then the big thing that happened that really took this stuff to the next level was when a Greek military dictatorship, well, there was a Greek military dictatorship in Athens at the time, but in 1974, a coup happened in Cyprus. So Greek Cypriot National Guard, Enosis, IOKA, the Enosis party, military junta, so just extreme Greek Cypriot right-wing fascists took control of Cyprus, and they went unification with Greece. And so they took control. Makaris wasn't cutting it. He wasn't doing a good job. So they overthrew him and were going to pursue Enosis themselves. And as a result, on the 20th of July, 1974, Turkey invades Cyprus. And this, they would argue, wasn't invasion. They would argue that it was a peace intervention. So the first thing they did was they controlled a bit of the north. They came in boats, took a small strip of land, cleared it of any Greek Cypriots, and then second phase occurred where they just flew in, loads of parachutes, loads of troops coming out, and then really pushed all the Greek Cypriots back and formed the separation as we know today between the north and south of Cyprus. But this invasion was not pretty. Many Greek Cypriots got killed, rape, murder. Yeah, it wasn't pretty. Again, wasn't pretty. And there's some really atrocious examples I'm not going to really get into because it's a bit gruesome, but there's a documentary on Amazon, Divided Island, which goes into this a lot more detail if you want to check it out. As a result, the UN steps in. They set up a buffer zone and they say that Cyprus is going to have to be a bi-zonal, bi-communal federation. But this was not what anyone wanted. This was not what the Greek Cypriots wanted, and it's not what Mentesh and the Turkish Cypriots wanted, because he wanted an independent Turkish Cypriot state. He didn't want no bi-zonal, bi-communal federation. But then in 1983, the UN General Assembly passed a resolution saying that Turkey is occupying Cyprus. Mentesh then went on to say he declared that the North Cyprus, Turkish Republic of Cyprus, was an declared independence. When he declared independence, the whole world, but mainly by Britain, which influences a lot of the world, especially in the UN, rejected this independence and condemned it. And to this day, North Cyprus is an unrecognised independent state. The Republic of Cyprus, well, the Greek Cypriot side, never joined Greece in the end. In 2004, there was a referendum whether Cyprus should be reunited before it joins the European Union, but it was rejected by the Greek Cypriots. And then the South of Cyprus, Republic of Cyprus, joined the European Union. So between 1974, when Turkey invaded, to today, the north of Cyprus has lived under embargoes. The Greek Cypriots have been vilifying the Turkish Cypriots, saying that the invasion from Turkey was unlawful, that it was an invasion. They refused to accept what they did when in the civil war, where they murder him and forced the Turkish Cypriots to live in enclaves for about 10 years. The Turkish Cypriots refused to accept that Turkey invaded. They say it was a military intervention to save the people. And basically, they've been in this limbo stalemate zone since 1974. Just a bit of context. After World War II, the EU took 6 years to resume economic activity with Germany, but it's taken 58 years, and there's still nothing for the Turkish Cypriots. And then today, in the schools, the Turkish Cypriots are completely absent from the Greek Cypriots educational system. So what they're taught is that the Greek Cypriots fought for enosis. In 1960, they got granted independence. There's no mention of a bi-communal republic, just the Republic of Cyprus. And then one day, randomly, Turkey decided to invade in 1974. It's a highly conservative, nationalistic mainstream media on the island. But there is hope for peace. There's a campaign called Unite Cyprus Now, which I'll leave in the description, which is, includes in the name. They want unification now. But some people believe that because there's been this kind of unofficial two-state on the island now, that it's going to have to remain like that, and that Cyprus should just be recognised, and let's just get on with it, really. Some people even suggest unification of North Cyprus with Turkey. But why this is of great importance is around the world and around Europe, the far right is on the rise, as we can see in the UK, as we can see everywhere. But this is particularly of concern in Cyprus due to this history. And when the far right rises, they pick enemies of the other. And so basically, there's a concern that it's going to kick off again. And the bloody history may repeat itself. But since 2003, people have been able to move freely between the islands, north and the south of the island. Like, for example, the fuel is much cheaper in the Turkish side. So Greek Cypriots can drive to the Turkish side, fill up their car and drive back, which is a lot they do. And the borders are quite busy as a result of that. And so that's basically the history of Cyprus. There's a lot more details, a lot more specifics, as you can tell. That was a brief summary. I just want to shout out the Laws family, because most of my research I got from the Divided Island documentary on Amazon Prime, and Isaac logged into Amazon Prime on my iPad, and I've been using it ever since. So big up the Laws for basically sponsoring this video. But go check out Divided Island on Amazon. It's a really good film, a really good documentary. But we'll always end the Mentesh podcast in traditional fashion, and everyone knows dad joke of the week. So dad joke of the week is, if like me, you've ever been accused of being born in a barn and just want to talk about it, just remember, my door is always open. Boom. So that was new style, new podcast. Let me know what you think. Drop your comments in the comment section. And I might do another one of these. I'm going to get a guest on next week. But thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned a thing or two about the history of Cyprus. And boom.